All right, we are back. This is Creativity is the Cure. I am your host, Malcolm Moore, and today I have my new friend, Nick Moceri. How are you doing, Nick?
Great. Thanks for having me, Malcolm.
What location in California are we located in today?
Okay, we are in Studio City, California. We are very specifically in a converted garage that was formerly a carriage house that was formerly a chicken farm built in 1928.
Wow. Because this looks like a yoga sanctuary. I really like the sparseness.
I haven't lived. I haven't lived here since 28. No chicken vibes, but yeah, we're doing it.
Okay, just so, especially for my students that listen, so everybody knows about Nick. Nick Moceri is a full-service creative producer whose films have premiered at Sundance and South by Southwest. He has worked with studios including Netflix, Amazon, Lionsgate, and Sony. Nick's most recent films include Sovereign and Sitting in Bars with Cake. Nick's complete list of credits can be found on IMDb. Let's first say how we know each other. I am an in-house temporary sub at your son Noah's school, Champs School of the Arts.
Indeed. Shout out Champs High School.
Yeah, I would say the most positive, fun environment as an educator I've ever been in. Like, it's just wonderful. And I just got to say, I've never seen a school where all the kids are just totally kind to each other. I mean, when I grew up in high school in the 80s, we had like the jocks and the druggies and the academics and all this, and they didn't mix. But what I love about the school is everybody is all together being kind and compassionate.
Yeah, it's this wonderful little like incubator of every proclivity and talent and everything. And I think it's beautiful. It's a little oasis in the jungle of Los Angeles.
Yeah. No matter what I'm going through, I love to be there because I just forget about it and have fun.
Yep.
Now, what I've got to ask you, first of all, I'm a musician, so I'm a drummer. I know what a producer is for music. They bring everything together, and often an artist will hire a producer to help them realize their vision. Could you tell everybody, as a film producer, how does that differentiate, and how could you get it down to 2 or 3 sentences what you do?
Yeah, so a producer, and like you said, there's a lot of different definitions of what a producer does.
Yeah.
So a producer in film, that is the highest level producer credit. In television, it's executive producer.
Right.
So in film, the producer is essentially, if you think of every movie as a startup company,
right,
the producer is the CEO.
Okay.
They are the person who...
The overseer.
Yeah, the overseer, right? They hire the staff. They're there from the birth of the idea and the project up until it's released. And so it's the person who is at every stage of development, pre-production, production, post-production, and then release. And that is the reason why at the Academy Awards each year, the Best Picture Oscar is given to the producer.
Now, I think a lot of people that are just fans of films could get confused with, I know that in TV, the person running it is the showrunner, but in films, it's the director. So if someone comes up with an idea, like a Peter Jackson for Lord of the Rings, he's the director. And to me, it seems like he's overseeing a lot, but how is yours different from him? Are you taking over things like fundraising and, how does that, what's the difference?
So, I mean, certainly the producer does some of the less maybe desirable things. We've got to go deal with the money and the contracts and all that kind of stuff. But actually, I see myself very much as a creative producer, and it's left hand, right hand with the filmmaker. So the filmmaker is responsible for the vision of the film and then the direction of the film, and then the producer is the facilitator. I really see my job as a hospitality position. It's my job to make sure that the filmmaker, all the department heads, whether it's production designer, cinematographer, everyone has the tools and crew they need to do their best work.
Right. And do the directors often reach out to you like, it's not going well today because of this division of the project, and you can go fix that for them while they focus on filming?
Yeah, I mean, I do my best, right? So it's, but I'm there on set to just sort of help however I can. So sometimes that's running off and helping put out a fire in a department, and other times it's talking to the filmmaker about how the performances are going. It's talking with the first AD about how we're doing on the day with schedule, and And I just always tell them, like, I'm here to help.
You're
like,
smoothing things out,
Yeah.
and helping everybody do their jobs better.
Yep.
So when I watch a show like The X-Files, after it takes off and gets big, sooner or later you're going to see producer Gillian Anderson, producer David Duchovny.
Yep.
So I don't want to say this the wrong way. Is it because some of the stars, as they make money, they want to invest in the show? And how do we know when we're seeing the credits between you as the producer, the guy that's there since inception, and the other producers?
So it's something that we are trying to address as producers in the industry. I am part of a new collective of producers called Producers United. It's everyone from lower level producers like me to Oscar-winning producers of big movies, and what we're trying to do is really fight for the protection of producers. We're the only people on a production or call sheet without health insurance because we have no union or guild.
Wow. Wait, so as a producer, you're not SAG or...
No,
Wow.
we have nothing. So because it used to be that the studios, we would have deals with the studios and they would provide our healthcare and things like that.
Yeah.
But we're independent contractors. And then credit proliferation, where you see a million producers on a project and you don't know who anyone is. We're trying to really fight that the producer credit. We're even looking at like calling it the career producer credit. That's the person, or sometimes it's a small group of people. I mean, I've produced movies with 2, 3, 4 producers who all did the job and we shared it.
Yeah.
And then everyone else. And really, the appropriate credit for oftentimes what actors or other people are doing is the executive producer credit in film.
Right.
What that credit means or should mean is that person brought an essential element, a piece of talent, financing.
Right.
Maybe they own the book rights if it was a book adaptation. And so, yeah, we've gotten ourselves in a bad position where we got too loose with credits and just started giving out to everyone. And now we got to sort of like try to stuff the genie back in the bottle. And really, it's for the good of everyone, because you should be able to look at a movie and go, who did the job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's getting harder and harder with streaming because it seems to go faster and then it's going to the next episode. I was trying to read some credits last night and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, and that's not good for anybody.
So is the situation with producers like you any better over in the UK where they have BAFTA instead of SAG?
No, because producers don't have a union anywhere. So actually we're trying to talk to UK and European producers because they're all experiencing the same thing. And it's become very challenging to be an independent producer without a studio deal to survive and to
if you have a family.
Well, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, I'd like to do some really fun questions with you.
Please,
Could
let's do
we
it.
go back in time to a very young Nick?
Let's take the time machine.
What I'd like to ask you is, what's your first creative memory? It doesn't have to be film producing or some of the other amazing things that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
When's the first time that you thought of an idea in your head, you executed it, brought it into the physical realm, and you're like, whoa, where did that come from? Oh, it's me.
That's a great question. There's sort of a collection of memories, and so I don't know the exact order of time, but I remember I really loved shows like Pee-wee's Playhouse. I loved just the creativity and the weirdness and the imagination. So I was drawn to things like that, and I loved to laugh. And I was in a school play, sometime in elementary school, and I don't even remember the name of it. It was some baseball themed musical, and I got the umpire role. And so I got one song, and the song was called, I think, Dump on the Ump or Don't Dump on the Ump or something.
You're singing it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, but it was sort of a talk singing, almost. I mean, it wasn't a rap, but it was like, it was like me. And so, I memorized my lines and I'm just sort of delivering them, and the audience just starts laughing and laughing
Really?
and laughing. And it was like, oh, I can make people laugh. And so then I would go to my friends' houses and I started doing impersonations. I would watch a lot of Saturday Night Live and cartoons, and I found that I was a really good mimic. And so then I would go to people's houses and at dinner just start doing impersonations, and making adults laugh became the thing. And so I think it was a combination of that on sort of just an overall like creativity side, and then the rise of MTV, which now no longer exists.
It was a
like,
great
officially.
time. I remember the fifth channel, right?
Yeah. And so then MTV, like seeing the creativity of music videos and rock
And the
stars
commercials,
and the
remember?
commercials. Yes,
How different
absolutely.
they were?
Yep.
They were so creative.
Yeah. And so I think all of that, and then I got really into skateboarding. And so it was like skate culture and all of this in the, 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
I liked weirdos and outsiders.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Were your parents creative when you were growing up? Do you think their creative identity was passed on to you at all genetically? Or do you, some days go, oh, I get this from my mom or I get this from my dad?
Yeah, it's a great question. My parents are, on their face, you would not necessarily know them to be creative people. They're both professionals, very put together. But my dad loved painting and loved music. He worked for my grandfather in the car business, and so I think some of that was sort of like not so encouraged. And so I think my dad struggled to encourage me and not encourage me in those same ways. He's very encouraging of it now. He loves it. So I think he appreciated creativity. My mom similarly, just very intelligent. So she had a creative mind, but less in like, the arts and things like that.
Right.
And yet they loved watching movies. So we had a pretty good like movie collection at times. They would take us to movies. We were exposed to art and music and things like that. So I think that they exposed me and my siblings to a lot of creativity and art, even though they didn't think that they were maybe awakening a career in the arts.
Wow. It sounds like it was a very creative environment, at least supportive of that culture.
Yeah. Or I think like not dismissive of it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also being concerned that you can make your way in the
Well,
world.
yes. I think they had other plans and but growing up in, semi-rural suburban Washington state, we were, between Seattle and Tacoma, you didn't know people who were in the arts. We didn't know creative people, but then the explosion of the indie music scene in Seattle
with Sub Pop and all those things.
Sub Pop. I mean, I was 12 or 13 years old when I heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit" come on the radio for the first time, and like my DNA changed. And I was too young to go see Nirvana play shows. They were playing arenas by the time I was sort of like old enough, but as a teenager I was going to concerts all the time.
Really?
And very involved in the...
Can you tell me a couple bands that you saw?
Yeah, so I mean some of my earliest concerts were in Seattle, bands like Sunny Day Real Estate, Modest Mouse.
Yeah.
When I was in college it was Death Cab for Cutie. So like there was just this like wave of bands in and around Seattle that then you started meeting people in the bands or people in other bands, and it was just the best.
Now, I didn't plan on asking this, but since you're a producer, did you ever help any bands make videos?
Yeah, I mean, occasionally. What's funny is I didn't know what a producer did until later into my 20s. But I always was a producer, and in that way, I was a facilitator. My favorite thing, and kind of always has been, is connecting people to other things and just being a problem solver.
Right.
And so as I had friends in bands who were trying to accomplish things, it was like, well, I can help. And then I started managing bands because then it was like, well, we don't know how to get T-shirts printed. I'll figure out how to get T-shirts. We want to get sponsored by Gibson Guitars. I'll call Gibson. Like I just was fearless because what's the worst that can happen? Someone can just say no. And so I think I was raised in an environment with, my grandfather was an entrepreneur, and there was this fearlessness to like, I didn't feel like I had to ask permission.
Right.
I just was like, let's just go after it.
Right. And you were probably great at managing bands also because you're a musician. You played guitar, right?
I do, yeah. So, I mean, my official lessons were in piano. It was a good foundation. I didn't really love it because at that time it was very regimented. Like,
right.
Had I had a piano teacher that was like open to like me playing like pop music or rock music or something, I would have probably stuck with it. But classical wasn't my jam. And then, self-taught guitar and sang, and I performed in bands, and I like performing, but I could tell really quickly that there was a different gear.
Right.
And so when I didn't find myself naturally in a band that sort of like could get some momentum, I was like, oh, I can help in other ways. Like I want to be in and around the scene.
Yeah.
And so then management became the thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a very serious question. Do you think creativity could be implemented in curing people, or at least helping people with mental health struggles like depression, anxiety? I'll say this. I grew up being a jazz drummer. So if I do a drum solo, I have to draw from everything I've ever learned, but I have to make up something off the top of my head, and it needs to make sense. And a few years ago, I was going through some personal issues, and when I resolved them, I said, wait a minute, I used that same part of my brain. I improvised. So looking at it this way, do you think any aspect of the creative life that you have for yourself or for friends, do you know, has it helped people that are struggling with anxiety and depression?
For sure. And I think that, I mean, first of all, I'm so thankful that we live in a time where those things are being talked about and addressed. I think, when I was growing up, it was stuff it down, ignore it. And, we didn't understand just the ways people's different brains worked.
Right.
And, but I think with creativity, it's such a good outlet. And I think what we sometimes do is I think we sometimes judge what that output is. And I think if we can just create without judgment, without expectation, it can create a wonderful just release of feeling. Like if you've got anxiety or anger or confusion or whatever, like let that flow out into your art. And then sort of let it go, if you can, right? And then the other part that I think creativity can help in this way is community. I think that
interesting.
It can be so lonesome to be experiencing those thoughts and feelings. And so when you can share them with others or then find others who share those things, I mean, again, growing up in Seattle, a lot of damp gray skies, but that music, I can still listen to it and it helps me process those feelings, right? It's having someone express anger through a song or frustration or doubt or confusion or any of that. It kind of lets you go, I'm not alone. And I think when people realize they're not alone, it gives them hope. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that can feel elusive when you're struggling.
Right. And I think that's for the artist and the listener.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
All right. So when I first met your son, Noah, we were talking and I told him that I had a podcast and he goes, you should interview my dad. And I go, oh, what does your dad do? He's a producer. And he goes, he has this new movie called Sovereign. And I watched that. Wow. That blew me away. Thank you. I won't reveal anything, but my wife at the end, she's like, why? Why did it have to end that way? She was very upset.
Yeah. Based on a true story. That's why I had to end that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I really loved this movie. You did it in 2025, right? That's when it came out.
Yeah, we filmed it in early 2024, and then it came out summer of 2025.
Right, and for everybody that doesn't know, it stars Nick Offerman, Jacob Tremblay, Thomas Mann, Nancy Travis, Martha Plimpton, and Dennis Quaid. I've seen Martha Plimpton coming back and a lot of stuff like Task lately. One thing I like about this story, it is devastating, but the voice of the film doesn't take sides. Yeah. It just shares perspectives. And one thing I noticed about the 5 films of yours that I've watched, they all have one thing in common. They have something to do with outsiders, outliers, misunderstood people, morally questionable, and eccentric characters. Would you agree that there is that theme in most of your films?
Yes, it's not intentional, but as I've been looking back over the past decade of producing, you can see some patterns.
Yeah, after I watched 2 and I was about to watch the third one, I was like, oh, I see where we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it really makes you think, and it puts you in the perspective of maybe someone that you might not agree with them, but by the end of the film, you might understand their actions a little bit better because you've given them a voice.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so Sovereign is it's based on the true story of father-son, anti-government. They run into law enforcement. There's tragic results. And when I read the script and as I got to know the filmmaker, we really wanted to make a movie about empathy. I think that we live right now in such polarized times, and we've stopped listening to each other. And so if we can examine stories without judgment, just present them as humans, I think it can help us to understand that, like, we're never going to try to justify, criminal behavior or bad behavior, but to understand, like, how did someone get there, and can we get to them sooner? And so I think that I'm Italian, and so I'm a very emotional person, and so I tend to be a very emotionally driven producer, and I always felt like an outsider. I mean, I was a chubby kid with curly hair and pointy ears and buck teeth, and like I just didn't fit in, and so it was like I learned to be funny to survive. And then I think I've just always had a lot of empathy for outsiders, and that's why I love a school like Champs where the kids go, because it's a bunch of misfits that when I was growing up would be pushed off into groups and made fun of and whatever, and I was in those groups, and yet to see those kids get to have a chance to be celebrated is great. And so then as we're making movies like Sovereign or some of the stuff we have coming up, it's trying to think about, like, how do we start to tackle big issues and big ideas with empathy and with honesty. And
being a storyteller.
Yeah, and rather than having an agenda.
Yeah, one thing I found fascinating is I've always been a fan of Nick Offerman. Of course, like most people, I've seen him in Parks and Rec.
Yep.
But when he went on to do things like The Last of Us and your movie Sovereign, I was not only impressed that he could use his charisma to pull off a serious role, but I'm curious what you think. A lot of comedians that I like, or funny people, their humor, like you say, is a survival mechanism. And if you have worked with people like this that have a great sense of humor, do you think they bring something different to your film? Someone like Nick, it seems like someone that's a comedian and funny, they really get timing, and they know how to leave big spaces and pauses. So what's your experience with somebody like him?
Yeah, well, I mean, Nick in particular is a treasure. He's just such a gentleman, one of the nicest, funniest people. There's a comedian, Mike Birbiglia, who quotes this often, and he says he didn't come up with it, but I don't know who to credit it to, but that tragedy plus time equals comedy. And I think that comedians, they are observers, and they've experienced pain, and they understand what it is like to go through those things. And so I think they're natural empathy machines. Like, to make someone laugh, you have to get everyone to sort of like agree on a premise, and then we're going to surprise you with it, right? It's like a magic trick, basically. And so I think that when you take comedic actors and bring them into dramatic situations, they can mine depths in I'm going to say better way, but certainly a different way.
In a special way.
In a special way, yeah.
I would agree. Now, on that same vibe that we're talking about, the next movie I watched was Framing John DeLorean. Now, when I read about it, I was like, oh, this is fascinating, because I remember the cars and I remember how they were in Back to the Future.
Yep.
But you picked Alec Baldwin to play DeLorean. And here's what really caught me off guard. I thought it would be a straight drama, but it, for me, was a combination of documentary, drama, and then breaking the fourth wall. Because you're going back and forth between footage and Alec playing. But then when he's like sitting down, they're fitting the wig. I was like, what?
Oh,
He talks to the camera and they're showing how they made it. But it works. Was that hard to stitch that together to flow? Because it was brilliant.
Well, thank you. So I came onto that movie later and helped find some of the last financing it needed to complete the film. And so, all credit to that team who really put that movie together. But what was fun was when they came to us, it was this crazy idea of, we're going to do true documentary, we're going to do narrative, dramatic recreation and all these things. And I think someone like Alec, why he's so perfect for that is, again, he's got that, not only that comedic timing that, we saw in 30 Rock, but then, he's the same guy from Glengarry Glen Ross. And so he just has, like, on a dime can turn from I'm going to break your neck to, like, the funniest thing you've ever seen, and then breaking the fourth wall. So that's a special one for sure.
Yeah. And I remember there were a couple scenes in there where he's thinking out loud. I couldn't believe it. He's like, maybe I'm going to play it like this. Right. And you would think that'd only be behind the scenes, but it's part of it, and it helps it make it fascinating. And I think ultimately told the story in a more unique way than it could have.
Yeah, and I think like a straightforward DeLorean story wouldn't explain sort of like there's the man, the myth, the legend, the reality, all of that thing. And I think it actually creates a more empathetic view of a very complicated person.
I didn't even think about it that way. That's brilliant. Yeah. Interesting. So the viewer's not quick to judge.
Yeah, because you could just look at the headlines and, again, the car and the whatever and go, oh, I know who this person is.
Right.
And you don't. And then you understand, hearing from his family and how many times they tried to make movies about him and all of these things. Like it just, when you have people like John DeLorean or, even today, someone like an Elon Musk, like these people are so complicated and they do things that are brilliant and terrible and shocking and surprising. And it's a mindset that is really hard to understand. And so I think that if you can start to, again, sort of find different angles on it, again, we can empathize, which is different than like defending or any of those things, but just trying to understand, like, people who take those kind of risks and are that kind of entrepreneur, like they're just wired differently than most of us.
Yeah. The next film I watched was Strange Negotiations. Now, just so you know, 20 years ago, for the better part of a decade, I was a minister. So this was fascinating to me because I saw a lot of bands go from Christian bands to secular bands for a lot of different reasons.
Sure.
Maybe they wanted to make more money. Maybe they wanted to reach more people. I mean, a great example is U2.
Absolutely.
So this is about how a Christian artist becomes a secular artist. It's David Bazan from Pedro the Lion, right?
Yeah.
Very interesting to see how he struggled going from a pretty well-known Christian band to having to drive around house to house and do these little parties and survive and somehow support his family.
Right.
And you see how difficult that is, but how he is so conflicted that as a creative person, he needs to do this catharsis to survive.
Yeah, and seeing him go from believer to unbeliever, right? Someone who was in it and now someone who is not, and yet is still fostering conversations about it. So I grew up in the church. I interned at Tooth and Nail Records, which put out the first Pedro Lion records. I knew Dave for a long, long time. And so I really understood that scene in that world. And what's funny is the filmmaker Brandon Vetter reached out to me cold. He didn't know that I knew Dave and this whole world and things, and was like, hey, I like this thing you did. Do you want to help me produce it? And I was like, look, I know all these people. So like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
And the thing I loved about this movie is, as Dave's touring around, he still does it in these living room things. He's having conversations with people that the church is afraid to have at times. Right. A place where people can bring their questions, their doubts, all of these things, and without judgment, have a conversation. And
possibly bigger conversation than he could have before.
Absolutely. And so even though, I might land in a different place than where Dave lands, the reason why I wanted to get behind this and why I love Dave so much is that, again, he's fostering community and conversation that I think is so vital for people to process these big ideas that we avoid, and so I think that, and again, in terms of arts and all these kind of things, like, the great artists of the world were dealing with big questions of, man, God, eternity, all of those things. And again, regardless of where people land on those things, I think having the space to have honest questions and thoughts and all of those things is so important, because if you can't process that, then you really don't know what to do with it.
And not being afraid of making mistakes.
Yeah, that's right.
I think I only speak for myself, but when I got into spirituality, the big drive for me was to help people in need. And I did a lot of relief and development.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I left the ministry because I was sick of talking about it. I wanted to quietly just help people. And I see a similarity with David, that he just wanted to get into the nuts and bolts. He wanted to have that conversation, and he felt with all the rules of where he was before, he wasn't able to do that.
Yeah.
So I do see it as a evolving success for him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think also what I love is that we captured the wrestling, that I think that, the idea that any of us have concrete beliefs and ideas about much of anything is I don't think it's always honest. Like, I think that our deeply held beliefs and thoughts and things, they evolve and change. And sure, there are core beliefs that I have that haven't really changed, but the nuances do.
And the perspective.
And the perspective does. And so then I think, an artist like David, doing that publicly, I think is a real act of bravery and generosity.
Absolutely. And without being specific, for you working on each film project, has it ever changed your perspective on anything in life just by going through these stories and making them happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I have grown in empathy. I think that when I was younger, I found solace in a more black and white view of the world and ideas and things. And what I've come to realize is, whether I'm making a movie or having a conversation with someone, I don't know at any given moment where someone is at in the story of their life. Are they experiencing a loss, an illness, a crisis of faith, like whatever it is? Are they experiencing a real fruitful season? Are they having a great, you just don't know where you're finding them. And so then trying to just encounter them as they are and look for ways to love and serve and help. That's really my goal moving forward. And again, it's, it comes out of this drive for hospitality. And what is hospitality if not just another expression of love?
I like that. And it makes me think of an interview I read with Denzel Washington, that his dad was a preacher, but he feels like these are his sermons, these movies he's making. Yeah. And there's different ways for everybody to do everything.
Totally. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's apocryphal, but there's someone said, it's basically preach the gospel often, use words as little as possible. Sparingly. Right. I mean, just the idea that, like, let your actions be what you communicate to the world, not just a bunch of talk.
Yeah, I have a good friend. I'm not going to say his name, but he's a pretty famous musician, and he's Jewish. And he and I, when I was Christian, we had this long car drive where we were talking about stuff. We were just talking about faith and religion. I was asking how different it is to be Jewish than Christian. Yeah. I was very young, and he gets a phone call, and he said there's been a terrible earthquake in Italy. And he's like, Malcolm, what should I do? Should I go do, I think I should go do a concert and just give the money to the people. I was like, that's beautiful. Definitely do it. And that hit me hard. That was toward the end of my ministry. And I go, why am I talking so much? Why don't I just help people? I go, his faith is stronger than anything I could ever say.
Yeah. And I think that, the truth is we all have faith in something. I mean, even unbelief, atheism, whatever you want to call it, agnosticism is a belief, is a faith. Absolutely. And so, my hope for people is that they have the space to ask questions, to sort of either reinforce their belief or their unbelief so that they feel on solid footing with those things. And then, I just think in life, it's helpful to go through open-handed, knowing that, and I might change my mind. And that's okay.
That's okay.
Which is hard for me as, like, folded arm indie rocker that I grew up with. Right. Is like, you never were going to sell out and you didn't want to do this. And, like, I think that's where some, like, rigid thinking came in that wasn't helpful. And I think that having an openness makes you a more creative person. And I think having an openness to other forms of art, things you don't like, foods you don't like all of that stuff is informative. And, seeing bad movies is super informative, because no one sets out to make a bad movie or a bad piece of art. But, unless they're just doing it cynically. And so I think then, like, having that openness, it just sharpens you and your perspectives and makes you a more creative and interesting person.
Yeah, it's so funny you bring up bad movies, because I have a student that he and I share two lists our favorite well-done movies and our favorite movies that are bad, but we just love them.
Yeah, totally, right? And there's some movies that are bad that are sort of fun to, hate. And then there's other stuff that you're just like, oh, that was not for me.
Yeah. I think there's a clear division.
Yep.
All right. So the next movie I watched was A Kindergarten Teacher. Now, this one hit me really hard because I spent the last 13 years I was a music teacher, but I did spend a lot of time in the kindergarten environment.
Sure.
So I got this. And so this film really portrays how suppressed our creativity has become in the modern world. Maggie's character, Lisa Spinelli, is feeling alone and uninspired creatively and starts to live vicariously through her brilliant student. So this is Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ruining anything to say that she's a kindergarten teacher. She's kind of bored. She doesn't feel fulfilled with her creativity. She notices one of her students is very creative and talented and brilliant. And she tells the parents, and they don't support that idea.
Yep.
And then she makes a controversial decision.
Uh-huh.
In every one of your movies, there's at least one part where I'm like, oh my God.
They did it. They went there. Yeah. Yeah. So this was a movie. It's actually essentially a remake of an Israeli film.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And, I think what's so special about this one is just you don't see where it's going. And even when it goes there, you're still surprised. And I think just the way that it sort of lulls you into this place of like comfort and then grabs you, and you are so tense and worried and all these things. And so I think, what I like about that is it's a movie that really, it's a true like emotional roller coaster experience.
Yeah.
And
I personally love movies that I can't tell what's going to happen. And there is that collective stream through your projects. And even when we go to the movie with, Sovereign with Nick Offerman and Dennis Quaid, we know what really happened because you can read about it, but we don't know where it's going to go as perspective for. I love the dichotomy between Nick's character and Dennis because you see their point of view. You might not agree with them, but you're like, I get why he did that, and I get why he did that.
Right. Yeah. And I think that when you give voice to different perspectives, again, you really start to understand sort of like what is making these people tick, which then makes the collision that much more potent.
And I think it's very important also that you're doing at a time when, at least from my perspective, our country's never been more divided.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's very important, the message that you're putting out there.
Yeah. And, when we were developing this movie, people were really afraid of it. They were like, it's political. No one wants that. And it was like, it's actually not.
No, not at all.
It's apolitical. It's just a human story.
Yeah.
And yes, it involves the government and law enforcement and all these kind of things, but it is not the thing you think it is. It is not pro or anti anything. I mean, obviously, like, I think you present things and you go, all right, that's okay. That's not okay. Like, again, we're not justifying the terrible acts that happen in it. But it really does force you to set aside preconceived notions.
And there is a symmetry to the two main characters have a son, and they're trying to do the best they can to empathize and express their feelings and protect them.
That's right. And that rigid belief that each of these fathers has is the downfall of their sons.
Yeah. All right. So the last one I want to bring up, I'm a big fan of vampire movies. When I was, I think, the way it happened is I got Sting's first solo album, and he had a song about a vampire, and then he credited it to Anne Rice. So I read all the Anne Rice books, and still to this day, I think her books and TV shows really changed how people viewed vampires. And I see a lot of other movies and films stealing from her.
Yeah.
The only reason I bring this up is I figured before I watched this movie that I knew and had seen everything about vampires. You were the first person, you and all your friends that made this movie, that had a different perspective.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about is 2014's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. I think it could be renamed Vampire on a Skateboard.
That's right. That's right.
I love that it's noir, it's black and white. I don't know why, but it reminds me a lot of the vibe of La Strada.
Yeah.
The Fellini film.
Yeah.
Can you see why I would say that?
Oh, absolutely.
The slow pacing, but not boring. It's hard to do that these days with people that have no attention span. The body language of everybody. It's hypnotic and dreamlike. The mirror of the vampire and the young boy, the bathtub imagery. It reminded me, I don't know if you've seen Reservation Dogs.
Absolutely.
But the character Dear Lady.
Yeah. Yes.
It brought up all these feelings for me. And I really don't want to ruin this for anybody. I'll just say it's a vampire movie. I do want to ask you, how did you guys do the teeth coming out? That was just, it didn't look like a special effect. Is that revealing too much?
No, it's a visual effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it digitally.
Really?
Yeah.
It's so real.
Yeah. And I mean it's real. So what we did is the transition from no teeth to teeth, we just sort of hid in the digital.
It looks like more documentary.
Yeah.
Something about the way it was filmed.
Yep.
And it was almost painful how little the vampire female character talked.
That's right.
It made me so nervous.
Yeah.
I was worried about the cat because I'm a cat lover. I was like, if anything happens to this cat, I am turning this movie off.
Yep. Yeah.
Tell me a couple things about working on that movie.
Well,
it was very fun
and
very different for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was my very first credit as a producer. I'm an executive producer on the film. I went to grad school at UCLA with the filmmaker on Lily Amirpour. One of my classmates, Justin Begnell, was one of the lead producers on that. And so after film school, a couple years, they had started putting this movie together, and they were looking for help and asked if I'd come and help. And so they sent me the script. It was 150 pages. It read like the Persian Pulp Fiction. And they were like, we're going to do a black and white Iranian vampire Western. And I was like, that's not a thing. Okay.
It's a great pitch.
Yeah. And I still didn't know what we were going to do with it. And then they went and shot a little proof of concept of the girl on the skateboard in black and white with the chador. Some fangs come out. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a thing. So then I got, more heavily involved in the film and helping pull together financing. And then we got really involved in post-production and marketing and things like that. And I think that movie, and it's interesting you bring up Reservation Dogs, like it's the specificity of the world that makes it so relatable. Like none of us know what it's like to live in those spaces. I mean, unless you, in Reservation Dogs, unless you grew up, in and around Native people and reservations and things. But you understand what a community and a family and friendship is. And with A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, we shot this movie up in Bakersfield. So we shot this thing. Yeah.
Really?
2.5 hours north. Well, actually Taft, which is a depressed oil town across the freeway from Bakersfield. And it just creates this like otherworldly space. It was primarily Persian American actors.
Yeah.
And what was so cool was it was a chance for many of these actors to play roles that were very different than the typecasting that they were doing, right? So it's 2014. So many of them, especially some of the older actors, they had been cab drivers or terrorists or, fill in the blank of some Arab stereotype. And instead, they're playing these super nuanced characters, in this weird space and story. And there was just such a beautiful freedom to it.
And they're relatable too. I mean, some of them do drugs, some go to parties. They're into indie music.
Yep.
So there's no stereotypical viewpoints at all.
Yeah. And I think, just what Lily, the filmmaker, accomplished with it is, the testament is the costumes in the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures. Each year we get photos of people who dressed as the girl for Halloween.
Wow.
People have gotten girl tattoos, like all kinds of stuff. And like, that's when you've connected with someone in some way.
You've become part of culture.
Yeah. And I think what's cool is that movie plays on a bunch of different tones. It's serious and sad and funny and scary. And I think when you start to combine all of these things and you start to combine genre elements, that's when exciting things happen. And so then we premiered the film at the 2014 Sundance Film Festival. Mm-hmm. And it was the year of the vampire there because we had two other iconic vampire films premiere the same year. Jim Jarmusch's Only Lovers Left Alive with Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton. So good. And Taika Waititi's What We Do in the Shadows, the original mockumentary about vampires.
Yes.
And so that was like this really fun year that none of us knew each other or that we were making these movies, and here we all,
It's like a harmonic convergence of vampires.
Yep, and it was great.
Can you tell me one of your favorite movies and why?
I mean, my favorite movie of all time is Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Really?
I think it is.
I love it.
I think it is a near perfect film, and I think what I love about it is it's just all of these outsiders got together for the first time to make something. So Paul Reubens had his TV series. It's Tim Burton's first film. It's Danny Elfman's first film and score. And it's all of these elements just like throwing themselves into this movie. And, the Large Marge scene terrified me as a kid. And
I think all of us.
Right. And yet, you can't look away. And so I think it was just this, it was just this wild, free, colorful, crazy movie. And I wrote so many papers on it in college and things. And so that's my favorite movie.
And thinking of it now, even the cinematography is really wild. Like the way they punched up the colors. It almost makes me think of Edward Scissorhands too. That's like ultra.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you a quick funny story. So in the movie, at the end of the movie, Pee-wee has sort of sold his life rights to Warner Brothers to make a movie, the Pee-wee Herman movie.
Yes.
And James Brolin, Josh Brolin's dad, plays Pee-wee Herman.
Right.
And with Morgan Fairchild as Dottie, and it's the two of them. And
who was a big deal back then, Morgan Fairchild.
And James Brolin was a huge, sort of sex symbol movie star.
Yeah.
And so I got to meet James Brolin, and and I said, James, can we please talk about Pee-wee's Big Adventure? And he was like, oh my gosh, why do you want to talk about that? And I said, because it's my favorite movie. How did you end up in this movie?
Yeah.
And so he was working at Warner Brothers on a TV series, I believe, called The Doctors. And on a Sunday, the head of Warner Brothers called him up and said, we need you in the new Pee-wee Herman picture. We have no money, but I'll send you on a trip to anywhere in the world you want to go to.
Wow.
And he was at that moment reading the newspaper and saw an article about Fiji. And he goes, I want to go to Fiji. He goes, done. Hung up the phone. And he said it was one of the best vacations he ever had in his life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incentive. Your IMDb says that you're an actor and a writer also, and obviously we know you're a musician. Did that help you become a better producer because you learned at all levels, facets, and logistics of what it would take to make a film?
That's a great question. So certainly as a writer, I studied screenwriting, at various points in college and grad school. I still try to write like a thing a year, and it just makes me more empathetic and better at working with writers, right? Because I know how hard it is, and I understand how movies come together and screenplays. So that for sure. On the acting side, I enjoy performing. I've done stand up here and there. I just am comfortable putting myself out there.
Right.
I've never considered myself to be like a true actor. I don't have the craft or knowledge, but I've shown up on IMDb a couple times because in a pinch, a good producer jumps in. And so in a movie I made called Deidra and Laney Rob a Train, that was one of the first 12 independent films that Netflix ever made, and it went to Sundance. We had a movie about this star student who, her and her sister start robbing trains to make ends meet to get mom out of jail. And we realized when we were filming, we'd never shown this star student in school. We had no we started in the high school, but not in a class.
Right.
And so it was like, well, we have no budget, no time. Who wants to play the teacher? And I said, well, I'll do it. So if you turn on that movie, I'm in the first 5 minutes, you see, my face. And then on Sitting Bars with Cake, a movie I made for Amazon in 22, came out in 23. I show up uncredited at a very pivotal emotional scene at the beach at the end, being pulled on a sled. So you can look for me there.
Well, despite what you just said, having acted before, having performed on camera, does that give you insight that if you're on the set of a film and someone's struggling, you can at least offer some advice or at least have compassion or understanding for when they're frustrated and they can't hit the mark?
Yeah, I would say compassion and understanding more than I would try to offer advice to an actor.
Have you tried it like this?
Well, I think what you realize is different than when you're, on a stage and doing a play or something like that. When you're doing anything that's filmed, there's so many things moving around you and people, and you have the timing of it. Like, so it's such you feel very exposed. And so it's very vulnerable to feel like I've got to hit my mark, say my line, do my thing, and somehow stay emotionally present.
And 20 people are in front of you.
Yeah, 20 people in front of you, and you're supposed to emote and do these things. So that's where I have so much respect. I think acting is the hardest job in the business.
Yeah.
You are subjected to people's just like whims of like what they're looking for, which you have no control over, barring surgical intervention. Like, and even then I wouldn't start chasing trends, and so like, you don't know if you're the right person for that thing. And then when you're picked, you got to show up and do the thing. And so
deliver the goods. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. One more very fun question.
Yes, please.
If you were a special guest at a film school, what is the most important advice you'd want to impart to the students?
I say the same thing when I talk to students, and I love talking to students because they don't realize it, but they have so much time ahead of them. So I actually say two things. One is stay patient.
Yeah.
Like, we put, as a society, put such a premium on youth and, rising fast and all this. And I think that's I think it's just a lie. Like, some people do, some people don't. But like, I think learning your craft, taking the time and having the patience to go through the motions, make mistakes, be fearless. I think all that stuff is really valuable. So that's sort of one. But two, the way to do that is to just make stuff. And so the thing that I'm always telling students is just make things. Like, most of them have phones in their pocket that have world-class cameras on them.
Right.
Combine that with some good sound, and they can do it. And I think what happens is, especially in film, we wait for permission to create because it's like we need someone else's money, we need someone else's whatever. And I go, no, like, what can you do in a room with two people? What can you do in your yard? What do you do with what you have?
Yeah.
And then just start making stuff and not spending a lot of money and just learning your taste and learning your craft and making mistakes. And, during the pandemic when we were all, had to shelter in place, shelter at home kind of things, like, the kids wanted to make a short film. And so we just went and
I got to see that. It's
great. Yeah. We made a short film here at the house. And like, it was just with, costumes from the closet and things and just that, like, running around and making a thing is such a fun experience. And outside of film, like, playing in a band, like getting together in a room, sharing air,
writing songs, just keep doing it.
Writing songs. And again, with no judgment, like, just enjoy it, even though it's hard and it's work and it takes things, but like to just get after it, I think that's the best advice.
What do you have coming up next? Can you tell us anything about?
Sure. I mean, none of it's a secret, just none of it's official. So it's, I have no secrets. What is next? The filmmaker of Sovereign and I have a handful of projects we're trying to put together. The next one we want to make is another drama about a highly charged subject that we will bring a very human perspective to. So we're trying to put that one together, helping a friend put together a Nashville music love story that's kind of cool. And he's got a deep background in pop music and musicals. And so I've never made a musical in that way. And so it'll be an interesting, new set of skills. Like, I'm always looking really just to expand.
Try something different too.
Yeah, try something new, try something different, and getting to work with more new people. It's my favorite thing.
If people want to get in touch with you, filmmakers, or maybe they just want to ask you about a project, what is the best way to contact you, like social media wise?
The good news is I'm not hard to find. So my production company is called All Night Diner. So if you go to allnightdiner.com, there's ways to get in touch.
And you're on Instagram too, right?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Moceri, Moceri, and at All Night Diner. And I have healthy boundaries, so, I don't mind having it out there.
Well, it's been a true pleasure getting to know you, Nick. And I hope we can do this maybe when your next film comes out again.
Yes, please. I'd be happy to. Look, I love that you are putting a focus on creativity and kind of how do we, utilize that to help each other and help ourselves. And so I love what you're doing. Keep going.
Thanks very much. All right.
Thanks, Malcolm. All right.
Hello, my name is Jefferson De Leon, and I am a scientist in the biotech sector and a comedy musician, and I am a proud sponsor of the Creativity is the Cure podcast, because creativity is central to who I am and what I do. Check out my creations on my website, jeffersondeleone.com. That is JEFFERSONDELEONE.com.